Full disclosure, I am not getting paid any money to say anything about atomic filament. This is an unsponsored review with my honest opinion. There are two types of 3D printing manufacturers. Either they give you the gummy bears or they don't. You can see that Atomic Filament sent me over 4 spools, 2 of which were PLA and one of them was PETG, with another being ASA. In this video I primarily tested the PLA, Eyes PLA. Atomic Filament recently expanded their offering and they wanted me to highlight their shade shifting colors, including Too Good to Be Blue, Bug Eye, and Chameleon Coastline, all in both PETG and PLA. They also launched an ASA offering, which is a more high temp and UV resistant material. Alright, now let's talk first impressions. So the moment you open up a spool, you'll see a small pack of Dessicant, which is pretty standard for filament nowadays. And I noticed that the filament is really neatly wounded and it's secured with tape, so it doesn't get knocked loose during transit. The spool itself has a really appealing design and it looks really intricate with all the special patterns that they put on it. Just a small detail, but it's the little things in life that make things special. And while I struggle with opening this tape, let me talk to you guys about what type of company Atomic Filament is. Atomic Filament is 100% made in America with American materials. They are located in Indiana and they have a really fast sales response team. That means if you contact them via the email on their website, they'll respond to you really quickly, just as they responded to me. Most reviews on Atomic Filament are usually positive, so that might be a sign to go and check them out. Now I went to load this filament up onto my Bambu Lab A1 Mini's AMS Lite, and what surprised me was it immediately fit. Atomic Filament has recently made the transition to make their filament spools fit on Bambu Lab's AMSs. This is really handy because for every single filament I've used in the past, I've had to 3D print an adapter for it to fit on the AMS. And some spools are too small for the AMS Lite, which can also be a bummer. So good job to Atomic Filament for considering the Bambu Lab market. And while we wait for the AMS to load this filament, huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. They offer a plethora of fabrication services including 3D printing and CNC machining, as well as PCB manufacturing. Check them out in the link in the description. Now back to the review. I'll just throw down facts as they come to my mind. First of all, I printed this filament with generic PLA settings. I didn't take the time to tweak them, since many users would unpack the filament and immediately start printing with the generic profiles. One thing that satisfied me was that the plastic did not smell during printing. A lot of times with really cheap PLAs, you'll get a really nasty smell that builds up in your room. When printing Atomic Filament's Eyes PLA, that did not happen at all. The filament's aesthetic is quite interesting and it's quite hard to capture on camera. It seems that the filament is color changing as advertised, meaning there's a lot of depth to it. What I mean is that in some angles, if the lighting is just right, the 3D print ends up seeming slightly blue or slightly light green, which is quite interesting, hence the name Bug Eyes. You can see that some of these aesthetic models, meaning sculptures, turned out quite beautifully. I was able to create some pretty beautiful 3D prints with this filament. You can also print functional parts with this filament as well. It works just as intended. Although I'm not sure why you'd do that, since you could easily use this filament for more aesthetic and visually pleasing prints. To be honest with you, words and camera cannot describe how beautiful this filament looks, and the only way to truly find out if you like this filament is to grab a quick sample from Atomic Filament's website. They do this really nice thing where you can grab a free sample to see if you want to buy the whole roll. So definitely check that out. And while I compare these last few prints and showcase a couple more prints, let's talk about the nitty-gritty of this stuff, the price, and who I think this filament is intended for. If you go onto Atomic Filament's website, you'll find that the prices for these really interesting filaments aren't the cheapest. They aren't the most budget friendly, but they're not over the roof either. They also offer a more economical lineup of PLA called Meltmizer Economy PLA for those that are looking for a more budget conscious option but are still wanting to get excellent quality filament. So who is Atomic Filament's Bug Eyes PLA for? From my experience, this filament, along with Atomic Filaments, is for people who have a really well-tuned printer and are printing things like sculptures and decorations as gifts for friends and family, or maybe a small business. It's not for those who are looking for some random filament to rapidly prototype their next big invention. Rather, it's those that want a really well printing filament that can create something special for others. And some bonus features for those of you that stayed this long with me: the supports come off quite easily and quite nicely without any further calibration. But one thing I've noticed is that the shininess, like other silk filaments, are affected by the speed and the time that's given for the filament to cool. You can see that there's a well-defined difference in texture where the 3D print was given adequate time to cool versus a lesser time to cool.